In Los Angeles, a struggling black single father named Marcus juggles raising his daughter and working multiple jobs while quietly harboring a dream of becoming an actor. One day, during a community theater audition, a famous but arrogant actress mocks his presence. But when Marcus steps on stage, his raw and powerful performance stuns the room, shifting everyone's perception of him and of what true talent looks like. The morning sun filtered through the dusty blinds of Marcus's one-bedroom apartment. In South Central L.A., he moved quietly around the tiny kitchen, careful not to wake his 8-year-old daughter, Amaya, who was still asleep on the pull-out couch. The air was thick with the smell of last night's leftovers reheated for breakfast. He wore his tiredness like a second skin, eyes sunken, shoulders tight, movements measured. Marcus was a janitor by dawn, an Uber driver by night, and a father. Every second in between. Every morning began the same way. Oatmeal for Amaya, black coffee for him, and a silent prayer as he kissed her forehead. He always made sure her clothes were neat, her backpack packed, and her smile intact, even when he didn't have one himself. School was her safe space. For him, the day meant scrubbing floors in silence, occasionally catching glimpses of himself. In bathroom mirrors, reminders of who he was, and who he used to dream of being. On his lunch break, Marcus sat alone in the janitor's closet, scrolling on his cracked phone. A flyer caught his eye. Open auditions. Community theater showcase. No experience required. Something stirred in him. Something long buried beneath bills and responsibilities. He had done theater in high school before everything changed. Before Amaya's mother walked away. Before survival replaced ambition. He almost laughed. Who had time to dream when rent was due next week? But that night, after dropping off his last passenger, Marcus parked outside the community center and stared at the glowing sign above the door. His hands trembled on the steering wheel. He could drive away and no one would know. Or he could walk in and remember who he used to be. After a long breath, he stepped out. This wasn't about fame. It was about reclaiming something he'd lost. His voice. Inside the community center, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. Marcus scanned the room. Polished hardwood floors, folding chairs lined up in rows, and a group of confident young actors chatting in the corner. He immediately felt out of place. Their clothes were trendy, their voices loud, and their presence secure. He walked to the registration table, scribbled his name, Marcus Hill, and sat silently in the back, wringing his hands. A woman with a clipboard called names for cold readings. One by one, actors took the stage, performing scripted scenes with exaggerated flair. Marcus watched, unsure whether he was being inspired or discouraged. Then the door opened, and in walked a woman who changed the atmosphere instantly. Tall, striking, and radiating confidence. She wore oversized sunglasses indoors and held a latte like it was part of her identity. Jessica Langston, someone whispered. A minor celebrity from a streaming drama. She greeted the director with a practiced smile. When she noticed Marcus, her brow arched subtly, her glance lingering with mild amusement. She sat in the front row, crossed her legs, and whispered something to the director that made them both smirk. Marcus felt the weight of being judged before even standing. His name was called. He stood up slowly, throat dry, palms sweating. Stage was only 10 steps away, but it felt like a mile. He could feel Jessica's eyes on him, bored, expectant, dismissive. He picked up the script, cleared his throat, and began to read. His voice cracked on the first line. A stifled chuckle came from the front row. But he didn't stop. Not this time. The laughter hit him like a slap. It wasn't loud, but it was sharp, unmistakably from Jessica. Marcus paused for a second, eyes fixed on the page, heart pounding. He wanted to disappear, to walk off the stage and never return. But something inside him cried, maybe refused. He shifted his weight, steadied his breath, and started again. But this time, he didn't read. He lived the words. His voice lowered, softened, then rose again, textured with quiet desperation. The monologue was about a father who had lost everything and was begging his son to stay. It wasn't just acting for Marcus, it was memory. The lines blurred between character and real life. By the end, the room was silent, completely still, as if something sacred had been disturbed. Jessica's amused expression had vanished. Her arms were crossed now, her brow furrowed in confusion, or was it something deeper? The director leaned forward slightly, eyes locked on Marcus. When he finished, there was no applause, just silence. Raw, unsettled, emotional silence. Marcus lowered the script and walked off stage without looking back. He sat down, hands trembling, unsure of what had just happened. The others were staring at him, some wide-eyed, others blinking as if they were waking up from something. Jessica said nothing, but her jaw was tense. Marcus didn't know if he had failed or succeeded, and only that he had given a piece of himself he hadn't shown in years. 3 days later, Marcus was mopping the hallway of a downtown office building when his phone buzzed. He almost ignored it. It was usually spam or unpaid bills. But the caller ID read, Community Arts Theater. He answered with caution. Mr. Hill, a voice said, we'd like to invite you for a callback this Saturday. The director was very moved by your audition. Marcus leaned against the wall, gripping the phone tightly. Me? He asked, as if it had been meant for someone else. The woman laughed gently. Yes, you. We'd like you to read for one of the lead roles. He nodded slowly, even though she couldn't see him. Thank you, he whispered. After he hung up, he stood in silence for a long time, mop still in hand, overwhelmed. That night, he told Amaya over dinner. Her eyes lit up with pride. Are you going to be on TV? She asked. He chuckled. Not yet, baby. Just a small play. But it's something. She hugged him tight, arms around his neck, her hair smelling of lavender and school crayons. 4. The first time in a long while, Marcus allowed himself to hope Saturday came fast. Marcus borrowed a button-down shirt from a coworker and printed his sides at the library. At the callback, he noticed something different, respect. Other actors greeted him, some with nods, some with genuine curiosity. Jessica was there too, but this time she didn't laugh. She watched, closely. For the callback, the director paired Marcus with Jessica. She walked toward him on stage, heels clicking with precision, posture perfect. Try to keep up, she murmured under her breath before the scene started. He gave a slight nod, not rising to her provocation. A scene was a confrontation between a grieving couple, emotional. Personal. Jessica started with sharp intensity, her delivery calculated and dramatic. Marcus listened closely, taking in every word, every pause. When it was his turn, he didn't try to match her energy. He grounded himself, breathed deeply, and responded not as a character, but as a man who had known real loss. His pain wasn't acted. It was remembered. Jessica faltered. Her next line came late. For a second, the rhythm broke. She looked into Marcus's eyes and saw something unfiltered, raw. Her voice softened, her posture relaxed. The scene shifted from performance to connection. By the end, neither of them was pretending anymore. When it ended, the room erupted in quiet applause. Not loud but real. Afterwards, as they stepped off stage, Jessica said nothing. She just gave him a single nod, almost imperceptible, and walked away. Marcus didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just exhaled, his heart still pounding. For the first time, he felt like he belonged. The next day, the cast list was posted online. Marcus sat in his car outside the laundromat, refreshing the page again and again until it finally loaded. He scanned the names quickly, then slower, just to be sure. Marcus Hill, Thomas, lead role. His breath caught in his throat. He stared at the screen, blinking back disbelief. He immediately called Amaya, who squealed with excitement and told all her friends at school. At work, he said nothing to anyone. He still cleaned toilets, vacuumed halls, and clocked out like always. But inside, something had shifted. He had something that was his. Something that wasn't about survival, but about purpose. The first rehearsal was scheduled for Monday evening. Marcus arrived early, script in hand, nervous energy coursing through him. Other cast members trickled in, chatting about agents and headshots. He didn't have either. He just had heart. Jessica arrived last, sunglasses on, coffee in hand. She took a seat beside him without saying a word. The director gathered everyone and spoke with warmth. "This play is about broken people trying to find connection," he said. "It's not about who's most polished. It's about who's most honest." Marcus looked around the room. Some looked excited, others skeptical. But he knew why he was here. He had lived this story. Marcus had never rehearsed with blocking before. He wasn't used to being told where to stand, when to move, how to project his voice. At first, he stumbled, missed cues, forgot lines, turned the wrong way. Some castmates grew impatient. Others offered quiet help. But Marcus never lost focus. He stayed late. He took notes. He practiced. Jessica, meanwhile, remained distant. She delivered her lines flawlessly, but without soul. The director pulled her aside one evening and gently said, "You're acting around the pain, not through it." She nodded, but her jaw tightened. It was clear she wasn't used to being challenged. Marcus observed in silence, watching her walls crack slowly. After rehearsal, Marcus would go home, tuck Amaya in, and stay up late reading his lines. He recorded himself on his phone, listening for truth in his voice. Some nights, he cried. Not because the lines were sad, but because they were too real. He was no longer just acting. He was healing. By the end of the second week, something shifted. His movements were smoother, his voice more confident. He wasn't just in the cast anymore. He was leading it. Jessica began looking at him differently, not with disdain, but with something closer to respect. She still didn't say much, but she didn't need to. Not everyone appreciated Marcus's rise. A younger actor named Dylan, who had studied drama at NYU, openly questioned why a janitor with no resume was cast in the lead. "Raw doesn't mean ready," he muttered one evening. Jessica overheard, but didn't intervene. Marcus said nothing. He'd learned that silence could be louder than defense, but the tension simmered. During one rehearsal, Dylan deliberately cut off one of Marcus's lines. The director paused the scene and corrected him, but the mood had shifted. Marcus stayed professional, but later in the parking lot, Dylan approached him. "You're not special," he said quietly. "You just got lucky." Marcus smiled, not out of amusement, but clarity. "If surviving everything I've survived is luck," he said, "then maybe you should wish for some too." He walked away, calm but firm. That night, he told Amaya, "Sometimes people fear what they don't understand. It's not our job to convince them, just to keep going." Word of the exchange spread quietly. Jessica, hearing it secondhand, didn't say anything, but during the next rehearsal, she stood up for Marcus when Dylan interrupted again. "Let him finish," she snapped. That was the first time she had publicly taken his side. Marcus nodded once in silent thanks. Jessica arrived late to rehearsal, visibly distracted. Her usual poise was gone, hair messy, sunglasses forgotten. During their scene together, She faltered for the first time, forgetting a key line. The room fell silent. She closed her eyes, whispered, "Sorry," and walked off stage. The director followed her. So did Marcus. He found her sitting alone in the stairwell, breathing heavily. "Rough day?" he asked gently. She looked up, eyes wet. "My mom's in the hospital," she whispered. "I've been pretending like everything's fine, but it's not." For a moment, all her defenses fell. She was no longer the actress. She was just a daughter in pain. Marcus sat beside her in silence. "You don't have to carry it alone," he said. "Pain doesn't get smaller when we hide it. It just gets heavier." She looked at him, truly looked, and nodded slowly. "How do you do it?" she asked. "How do you stay open?" He smiled sadly. "I never had the luxury of closing off." They returned to rehearsal a few minutes later. The scene played differently this time. Softer, realer. Jessica stopped acting. She started feeling. The connection between them deepened, not romantic, but human. Two broken people sharing the same stage, the same grief, and now, a kind of fragile trust. The director noticed the change. "That's it," he said after rehearsal. "That's the scene I've been waiting for." Jessica and Marcus exchanged a glance, mutual, unspoken understanding. From that day forward, the energy of the entire production shifted. It wasn't about performance anymore. It was about truth. Even Dylan softened, keeping his distance but no longer hostile. The cast began to function like a family, messy, imperfect, but committed. Backstage, jokes were shared. Scripts were studied together. Marcus, once the outsider, became the grounding presence. People looked to him now for calm, for focus, for heart. Amaya came to one rehearsal, sitting quietly in the back with a juice box and wide eyes. Afterward, Jessica approached her. "Your dad's incredible, you know that?" Amaya beamed. "I know," she said simply. Marcus watched from a distance, pride blooming quietly in his chest. All his sacrifices, all his struggles suddenly made sense. Opening night was just 2 weeks away. Posters were printed, costumes finalized. The theater buzzed with energy and nerves. And in the center of it all stood Marcus, no longer invisible, no longer dismissed, no longer mocked. Just a man standing in his truth and ready to share it with the world. A night before opening, the theater felt different. The lights were softer, the shadows deeper. Marcus stood on stage alone, running, his lines under his breath, while the crew worked around him. Every word carried weight now, not because he feared forgetting them, but because he finally understood them. Jessica entered quietly, not wearing makeup or armor. "Ready?" she asked. He nodded. They rehearsed one final time, no audience. No pressure. Just two people chasing truth. Every pause felt honest. Every touch carried tension. When the scene ended, they stood in silence, breathing in the stillness. The director clapped softly from the back. "That's the one," he said. "Don't try to repeat it tomorrow. Just find it again." Marcus nodded. He didn't know if he'd ever be ready, but he knew he was willing. He'd faced far worse than a stage. This, in comparison, was light. That night, he walked Amaya home from school with his script tucked under his arm. She asked, "Are you scared?" He thought for a moment. "A little," he admitted. "But being scared, it means it matters." She squeezed his hand. "I'll be in the front row." That was all he needed. The theater buzzed with soft conversation as the audience filed in. Folding programs, silencing phones, adjusting scarves. Marcus peeked through the curtain and spotted Amaya in the front row, legs swinging under the seat. Next to her sat his boss from the cleaning company, wearing a worn suit jacket and a proud smile. Jessica paced backstage, whispering lines to herself. Marcus stayed still, centering his breath. The moment felt bigger than anything he had ever done, but smaller than the weight he'd carried for years. He adjusted his costume, tugged his sleeves, and said a quiet prayer, the same one he said every morning. The house lights dimmed. A hush fell. The curtain rose. The opening scene played out, nerves melting with each line. When Marcus stepped on stage, the air changed. The audience leaned forward, pulled by something they couldn't name. His first line wasn't loud, but it was true. And truth carried. The scenes flowed with a rhythm that felt alive. The pain, the longing, the confrontation, all of it real. When Marcus and Jessica reached their climactic scene, there were no forgotten lines, no hesitation. Just two broken souls crashing into each other in front of a room full of strangers and making everyone feel seen. When the final scene ended, there was no immediate applause, just a long, aching silence. People sat frozen, eyes wet, jaws slack, unsure if the play was over or if life itself had just spoken through two people on a stage. Then, slowly, someone stood and clapped. Others followed. Soon, the entire theater was on its feet. A standing ovation. Not the polite kind, but the rare. Kind, grateful, shaken, changed. Jessica bowed first, then Marcus. He caught sight of Amaya clapping wildly, her eyes glassy. She mouthed, "You did it." His throat tightened. Backstage, cast and crew hugged, laughed, cried. The director pulled Marcus aside, voice low with emotion. "You didn't just perform," he said. "You revealed something. People don't forget that." Marcus nodded, overwhelmed. He didn't know what to say, so he just listened. Jessica approached him, quiet and steady. "You carried us," she said. "I didn't think someone like you could do this. I was wrong." He met her eyes. "You weren't the only one." It wasn't just vindication. It was transformation for both of them. The reviews came in the next day. Words like haunting, visceral, unforgettable. Marcus's name appeared more times than he expected. One headline read, "A janitor stole the show, and our hearts." He took a screenshot, unsure if he'd ever believe it really happened. At work, people treated him differently. His supervisor offered to reduce his hours if he wanted to pursue acting full-time. "We'll make it work," he said. Marcus smiled, unsure how to respond. He'd never had choices before, only obligations. Now, doors were quietly opening. Jessica invited him to lunch. No cameras, no press, just a conversation. "You could go further with this," she said. "You have something rare, raw truth." Marcus hesitated. "I don't know where I fit in this world." She shrugged. "Maybe you don't. Maybe that's why you stand out." That night, he sat on the couch with Amaya, flipping through the paper. She pointed to a picture of him on stage. "That's my daddy," she said proudly. He didn't reply. He just looked at the photo, quietly stunned by the fact that, for once, he saw himself too. The play extended for 2 more weekends due to demand. Marcus adjusted his work schedule and kept performing. Each night, the audiences grew. People lined up after the show to speak to him, not as a fan, but as someone who had been moved, someone who needed to say, "Thank you." A woman in her 60s took his hand after one performance. "I haven't spoken to my son in 5 years," she said. "But tonight made me want to try." Marcus didn't have answers, but he offered a hug. Sometimes that was more than enough. Talent agent reached out after one show, offering to meet. Marcus was skeptical, but curious. They met in a coffee shop. The agent asked, "What do you want out of this?" Marcus thought for a long time. "I want to tell stories that mean something. Nothing fake, nothing pretty, just truth." The agent smiled. "Then we'll find the right ones." Marcus didn't know what that meant yet, but it felt like momentum. He still had bills, still had 2 jobs, but now he had something else too. A path, and that made everything different. As the final weekend approached, Marcus found himself thinking more about the past, about the nights he walked Amaya to sleep while ignoring eviction notices, about the time he almost sold his old script books for groceries, about the countless days he buried his dreams under reality. He remembered his father, a mechanic who never spoke much, but taught him the value of keeping your word. He remembered his drama teacher, Mrs. Landers, who once told him, "The world needs your voice, Marcus. Don't let it go quiet." He hadn't thought of her in years. At rehearsal, he shared this memory with Jessica. She smiled softly. "Maybe she's watching," she said. Marcus looked up at the lights. Maybe she never stopped. For the first time, he allowed himself to believe that some people stay with us, even when they're gone. Later that night, he found Amaya asleep on the couch, clutching a paper program from the play. On the cover was his name. He covered her with a blanket and sat beside her, hand on her back, whispering, "I promise I won't let this go." He meant it, the final. Night arrived. The theater was full. Marcus stood backstage, feeling a strange mixture of grief and gratitude. This wasn't just a closing night. It was the end of a chapter he never thought would be written. He looked at his reflection in the mirror older, tired, but finally proud. The cast gathered in a circle. Jessica spoke. "This play changed me. You changed me." She looked at Marcus. "Thank you." He nodded. No speeches, just presence. The curtain call would come later. For now, they had one more story to tell. The performance was electric. Every word landed, every silence sang. When the final scene ended, Marcus looked out at the crowd one last time. In the front row, Amaya stood up first. Then the whole room followed. Applause thundered through the building, echoing louder than any silence before. Backstage, there were tears, laughter, long hugs. Marcus sat alone for a moment, absorbing it all. He didn't feel like a janitor or a struggling dad or a nobody. He felt whole, seen, heard, and deeply alive. 2 days later, the agent called. "There's a role in an independent film," he said. "Father-daughter story. Intimate, real. You'd be perfect." Marcus hesitated. "Can I bring Amaya to the audition?" The agent laughed. "Bring whoever you need." At the studio, the director watched Marcus closely. The audition wasn't dramatic. Just a quiet scene about making breakfast and remembering love. But when Marcus finished, the room stayed quiet. Then the director said, "We've been looking for truth. I think we found it." Marcus got the part. It wasn't Hollywood. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real, and that was enough. He told Amaya, and she jumped into his arms, squealing with joy. "Does this mean you're famous?" she asked. He smiled. "No, just working." He took the role, balanced it with his job, balanced it with being a dad. Nothing got easier overnight, but something had changed forever. He was no longer invisible, not to the world, not to himself. Months passed. The film wrapped. Festivals picked it up. Marcus attended his first premiere in a borrowed suit, standing awkwardly next to professional actors. But when the film ended and people approached him with tears in their eyes, he realized he belonged here too. Jessica sent a message after seeing the film. "You keep breaking people open," she wrote. "Keep going." He replied, "Only if they're ready to feel." It was short, honest, and all that needed to be said. He took Amaya to a school event, and one teacher whispered, "You're the man from that movie." Marcus smiled. "I'm her dad," he said, pointing to Amaya. "That's the role I'll never stop playing." Later, Amaya asked if he'd do another play. "Maybe," he said, "if the story's worth it." She grinned. "You'll make It worth it? He didn't correct her. She was right. One evening, Marcus stood on the roof of his apartment building, watching the sun set behind the LA skyline. The city still buzzed below, loud and chaotic, but up here, there was calm. He held a script in one hand and Amaya's drawing in the other. He wasn't rich, wasn't famous, but he was fulfilled. He told stories, real ones, and somehow they were helping others see themselves more clearly. That was enough. More than enough. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you." To the people who believed, to the ones who doubted, to the pain that taught him, to the hope that never fully died. Then he went back downstairs to help Amaya with her homework. The lights in their apartment glowed warm. And in that simple, ordinary space, the realest story of all kept unfolding quietly, beautifully, one day at a time. Life after the film felt quieter but heavier. Marcus had returned to his cleaning job part-time by choice. He said it grounded him. "Every story needs a beginning," he told a coworker who asked why he was still scrubbing floors after being in a movie. "And mine started here." At night, he wrote. Not for auditions or agents, just for himself. Memories, pieces of dialogue, things Amaya said that stuck with him. He wasn't trying to become a writer, but writing became therapy. His own way of making sense of everything he had seen and lived. One evening, Jessica called. She had joined a local community arts program that worked with at-risk youth. "They need someone who's lived what they've lived," she said. "Someone who won't talk down to them." Marcus hesitated. Teaching scared him more than performing. But he said yes. The first class was chaotic. Teenagers with shields thicker than concrete walls. But Marcus didn't lecture. He just sat and listened. And slowly they opened up. Because for the first time, they saw someone who didn't pretend to have all the answers, but showed up anyway. The workshops became a weekly ritual. Marcus didn't just teach acting, he taught honesty. "You can't act truthfully unless you've faced your own," he told the group. The students rolled their eyes at first, but by the fourth session, something changed. One boy performed a monologue about losing his brother. The room went silent. Marcus waited. "That's what this is for," he said quietly. "That feeling right there. Hold it. Use it. Don't run from it." The boy nodded slowly. No applause. Just understanding. Jessica watched from the back and whispered, "You're building something." Marcus didn't answer. He wasn't doing it to be noble. He was doing it because he saw himself in those kids, confused, angry, overlooked. And no one should go through that alone. At home, Amaya asked why he always came back tired from the classes. He explained it like this: "Some people fix cars. Some people build houses. I help people find their voice." She blinked, then smiled. "You fixed mine too." Months passed. One afternoon, Marcus received a letter from his estranged mother. They hadn't spoken since Amaya was born. Her words were stiff but honest. "I saw the film. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I didn't know how to be." He read it 3 times, unsure how to feel. He hadn't hated her, just stopped expecting anything. The past was heavy, and forgiveness felt impossible. But then he thought about his students, about the healing he asked of them. How could he? "Not try?" he wrote back. "Not long or emotional, just honest. I'm open to talking. I can't promise more than that." Weeks passed with no response. He let it go. Growth doesn't guarantee reward. It just frees you from bitterness. And that was enough for now. Meanwhile, Amaya asked if she could meet her grandmother someday. Marcus paused, then nodded. "If the door opens, we'll walk through it together." A major media outlet published a story on Marcus. From custodian to coach, the man who found power in truth. He didn't expect it. The writer had seen his workshop and stayed afterward to to watch him connect with students. "You're what art looks like when it's lived," she had said. The article went viral. For days, his inbox flooded. Offers, messages, praise. But also questions. Will you write a book? Will you tour? Can you mentor more programs? It overwhelmed him. Marcus didn't chase fame. He chased meaning. And too much noise drowned that. He called Jessica. "I don't want to lose myself in this," he admitted. She replied, "Then don't. Pick what feeds you. Let go of the rest." He wrote that sentence down. It became a rule he'd follow. So he said no to most things, yes to a few, and quietly kept doing the work no one applauded, but everyone needed. One weekend, Amaya asked to visit the old neighborhood where Marcus grew up. "I want to see where you started," she said. He hesitated. There was pain there, but also history. He took her, pointing out the corner store, the cracked sidewalk, the closed church where he'd first performed in a Christmas play. "This is where I learned what survival meant," he said, "before I understood what living could be." Amaya took photos on her phone, asking questions about everything. "Did you cry here? Were you scared here? Did you ever want to leave and never come back?" He answered each question honestly. They sat on the same steps he had sat on. At 16, dreaming of escape. "You've already gone farther than I ever thought I could," he told her. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You gave me wings, Dad." He didn't reply. He just closed his eyes and breathed it in. Not every season stayed easy. One of his students was arrested after missing weeks of class. Marcus felt it like a punch. He had tried. He had listened. But it wasn't enough to save everyone. That's what broke him. He canceled the next workshop, spent 2 days in silence. Jessica stopped by. "You're allowed to grieve," she said, "but don't let one loss steal the rest of your work." Marcus nodded slowly. He knew she was right. But knowing didn't dull the ache. He visited the boy in juvie. No cameras. No lectures. Just presence. The team wouldn't look at him. But when Marcus stood to leave, the boy said, "Don't quit, man. They need you." Marcus paused. "You too," he said. When he returned to the next workshop, his students stood and clapped. Not for show, for thanks. He smiled for the first time in weeks. A small theater in Chicago invited Marcus to direct a new play based on community stories. He almost declined traveling would take him from Amaya, but she interrupted. "You always tell me to take brave steps. Maybe this is yours." He agreed, bringing her along for the summer. They lived in a rented apartment above a bookstore. It was small, but filled with laughter and late-night rehearsals. The cast was raw but ready. Marcus coached them the way he had learned, through honesty. Opening night in Chicago echoed that first performance back home. Small crowd, big emotions. When it ended, there were no flashy headlines, just quiet sobs and long hugs. That was his kind of success. And when Amaya stood beside him for the curtain call, hand in hand, he realized this was more than a play. It was proof that broken beginnings don't stop beautiful stories. After the Chicago show, letters began arriving. From teachers, inmates, teens, veterans, people who had never stepped on stage, but who found something healing in Marcus's work. One letter read, "I haven't cried in 20 years. But watching your play, I remembered I still had a heart." Marcus kept the letters in a shoebox, not to show off, but to remind himself that truth matters, even when no one claps, even when no one pays. It still matters. He read a letter to Amaya before bed one night. "Why do people write you?" she asked. "Because stories remind people they're not alone," he said. She thought for a moment. "Can I write one too?" He handed her a pen and watched as she began. And in that moment, he saw everything he'd fought for take root in her hands. Back home, Life settled. Not into boredom, but into peace. Marcus still taught, still performed sometimes, but mostly he lived. Morning walks, cooking breakfast, laughing during laundry. These were the scenes that meant the most now. He built a small studio in the back of their apartment, a quiet room, he called it. No phones, no noise, just space to write, reflect, breathe. Some days he sat in silence. Other days, the pen wouldn't stop moving. Amaya often curled up beside him with her own notebook. "We're writing different books," she said once. "But maybe they're part of the same story." He smiled. Exactly. The world still rushed outside, but in this room there was stillness. And in that stillness, he found a different kind of spotlight, one that didn't need applause. One morning, Marcus woke to a message. His film had been nominated for an award. Not a major one, but enough to make headlines. Jessica texted, "Told you truth wins." He replied with a voice note. Winning was surviving. This is just extra. He didn't fly out for the ceremony. He watched it on TV with Amaya, sharing popcorn and laughter. When they didn't win, he just smiled. "Next story," he said. Amaya asked, "What's it about?" He looked at her. "About us. Always has been." And that's what he kept doing, living, teaching, listening, writing. He wasn't chasing dreams anymore. He was becoming the kind of man he'd needed as a boy, and helping others do the same. Not everyone knew his name. Not everyone remembered his story. But those who felt it, those who were changed by it, never forgot. And that, in the end, was all he ever needed.